Welcome to a brand new series of Here to Compete, and today we are with Andy Cole, a goal-scoring machine who talks about what he thinks when people call him arrogant, the truth about his fallout between him and Kevin Keegan, and why Manchester United was the right choice and the impact that Sir Alex Ferguson had on his career. Delighted to have you with me, Andrew Cole. How are you?
Good, very good, thank you.
Lovely to see you. You looking well?
Yeah, I'm taking over.
As I'm introducing you there, Andrew Cole, let's start with that. What do you prefer? I've always called you Andy, and the Geordies did, and then later it was Andrew. Where's that all come from?
It's always been Andrew. You know, I've never changed my name. I was christened Andrew. You know, it depends what day it is.
Yeah.
I mean, if I'm Andrew or Andy, it depends.
Yeah. People still call you Andy when you walked in the streets of Newcastle.
I've not got a problem with it. I think when you play football, everything, if you got a name like Andrew, you get shortened, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You know, it's like if you got Robert, you get called Rob or Bob or whatever. Yeah, you get used to it.
You played for the biggest teams in England. You had some time abroad as well. Let's take you back to the start, Arsenal, the academy, and that sort of period, and trying to get into the side. What was it like? What was the start like for you? You know, your footballing career. When did you first realise you had a bit of ability?
I think when I retired, I realised I had a little bit of ability. I was fortunate enough, or unfortunate enough, to go to the national school for a couple of years as well. I think that was good grounding. It's difficult at the time, you know, but I think looking back at how he did me the world of good. You know, I think I was growing anyway to a certain extent, but I think I grew up even quicker, and then moving to Arsenal to become an apprentice. I think that kind of like opened my eyes a little bit to what he was going to become a professional footballer. Was it a happy childhood for Andrew Cole, the young boy? No complaints, to be fair. I think, sitting there remembering my childhood, but
close family and...
Yeah, but grown up a little bit too quick, I could say. I mean, I think when I went to the national school for a couple of years and left my parents when I was 14. You know, nowadays there's not going to be many kids leaving their parents at 14 years of age and going to a national school for 2 years. Like I said, you become grown at 14, you know, and then you got to like navigate yourself through those couple of years when you're at the national school and, you know, coming across boys from all over the country and dealing with problems on your own. And yeah, you do grow up a little bit quicker than expected, but it is what it is.
That's tough at 14, with a few tears and parents upset, you're going away, and you're still you're a child, you've got kids yourself, I mean.
Yeah, and I always say to myself now, when my son was 14, would I have let him left home? No, definitely not, because he wasn't ready. You know, like I said, I thought I was ready at the time. Yeah, when you do leave, you know, of course there's going to be a few tears because you don't know what to expect. But in the tough world, what it was back then, you know, you grow up and, you know, you got to, like I said, navigate yourself through certain situations that you wouldn't have thought you would have had to at such a young age. But like I said, I think for me, that was my grounding.
It made you tougher.
It made you tougher, yeah. And I think to a certain extent, it made you emotionless. Because I think when you're living with boys the same age as you know, and then you got the year above, you got 16 kids the year above, and then you move in the year younger, and then, you know, you go in and within the first couple of weeks, I mean, everyone sets their parameters and the elder boys come in, steam into you, and then you got to stand up for yourself, you got to tear out with the older boys to like set where you're at, and yeah, it was funny. It was funny. I'm sitting there laughing because some of the boys couldn't hack it, you know, and some of the boys found it hard to move away from home, and then kind of like the elder boys were bullying them a little bit. Yeah. Some of the boys couldn't get read through it and ended up leaving, you know. And sitting there now, like I said, I don't know if I could do it now if I was to go back to when I was 14, but when I did do it, it never bothered me because those are the kind of kids that I was growing up with. So for me, it was like, yeah, crack on with it. Let's just get on with it, man.
Were you a tough young kid, would you say?
I don't know. I think my environment was tough. You know, so if you grow up in a tough environment, you see things for what they are and you get on with them. You know, because you understand. I think when I was younger, I was always surrounded by my elders. You know, and a lot of the time, my elders wouldn't let me get into a lot of nonsense or whatever because they always believed that I had a talent to go and play football. So I think growing up with elders and understanding what they was about and the way they used to look after me, yeah, it made things a little bit easier.
That respect for the elders that you talk about is, you know, our generation. It's probably a very different world we live in today with the modern football, right? So.
Yeah, it's a big difference. And I think, especially when I joined us as a YT and that, I just think that the respect you had for your senior pros, just the way, you know, you used to speak to your senior pros when they decided to speak to you. You know, it wasn't like you're seeing now young pros, I mean, walking up to senior pros and starting a conversation. When we were younger, there was none of that. You know, if a senior pro spoke to you, he was more than happy. You know, but society's changed. You know, the way people talk to people now changed. You know what? I mean, you got young kids calling you by your surname and that. When we were growing up, there was none of that. There was absolutely none of that. You know, but like I said, it is what it is. You just got to be able to navigate yourself through it.
Why do you think it didn't work out at Arsenal? It's a bigger club too soon?
No, I wouldn't say that. I've said it many times. The manager didn't like me, I didn't like him. It's just as simple as that. You know, I'm not going to sit here and try and flannel it. He thought I had a little bit of confidence in myself, and I think back in those days as well, you know, being a young black kid, if you had confidence, it wasn't perceived as confident, it was perceived as being arrogant and all that kind of nonsense. But ultimately, if you ain't going to believe in yourself, no one's going to believe in you. And I found out a little bit when I was a kid at Arsenal. You know, I always thought that I could go there, I could make it, you know, I could play in the first team. And when I left, you know, the comments were like, oh, we didn't think he would score goals. Back then it was the Championship, well, not Championship, Division 1.
Yeah.
You know, didn't think he would score more than, for instance, I don't know, 10, 12 goals, sorry. Those comments only come out when you leave, but when you're there, it's totally different. So yeah, I think when I was there and it didn't work out, and when I left, I think that's what really inspired me to know that I could go and achieve what I wanted to achieve, but I had a hell of a lot of people to prove wrong at Arsenal.
You use the word arrogant there. Do you feel that's sometimes been pushed at you unfairly through your career?
Yeah, I think everyone's always had that narrative. And I look back now and I just laugh. I piss myself laughing because, you know, if someone judges you by, I don't know, the way you carry yourself or whatever it may be, or, I mean, because I'm a quiet individual, people look at that as, oh, he's arrogant. Why? Oh, because he's quiet. So is that a problem if someone's quiet? But I've realised even more as I've got older, it is a problem to a lot of people if you're quiet, because no one knows what you're thinking. So people have a problem not knowing what you think. It's like, oh yeah, he's arrogant. Why? Oh, because he doesn't say anything. So what's the problem with that? Is there a problem? Yeah, because he's quiet. So where's the problem? You know, we all can't be the same. We're not all the same for the right reasons or wrong reasons. But yeah, that's always been labelled at me. But in the end, I'm like, Maniano, I couldn't give a monkey the back, to be fair.
I spoke to Peter Schmeichel this week. He said exactly that. He said, when you first came to Manchester United, they thought, oh, is he a bit arrogant? And then as soon as he and the other players got to know you, they thought, what a great lad, you know. I think sometimes that's hard, that the guys who know you, I know you're a great bloke. But the outside perception is often very different, you know.
Yeah, but we can't be living our life for what people think about us. You know, and as I've got older, I've started to realise what people think, oh, you can have that opinion. You know, have it. You know, that's entirely up to you. It's like, you know, living up to the culture, the cancel culture. Well, if someone wants to cancel you, let them cancel you. Because what are you cancelling? I mean, I am what I am. You know, if you don't like it, it's fair enough. But I'm not going to sit at home rocking myself to sleep or rocking in the chair and think, oh, he doesn't like me. Well, everyone's got an opinion. You know, everyone's entitled to their opinion, wrongly or rightly. That's your opinion. But like I said, I can't be living my life for people saying, I don't like him because X, Y, Z, or I like him for X, Y, Z. Hey, that's all up to you.
I'm sure you pass these sort of lessons on to your own kids, and there were young people watching this and who probably feel the same. Maybe they're quiet, they're insular, and people think they're arrogant. And I guess what you're saying is the key is to anyone watching this, just stop caring what people think.
Be you. That's the way I look at me. I'm me. If someone's got a problem with me being me, well, it is what it is. But I'm genuine to me, first and foremost. And that's the most important thing. I have to be me. I don't want to try and be somebody that I'm not, because I'll be lying to myself. So whatever I've been through in my footballing career, whatever's been said about me, I take it on the chin because it really doesn't bother me. You get up in the morning, you look yourself in the mirror, and the first person you see is you. I don't see anybody else. The first problems I have are with me, nobody else. I deal with all that. So whatever people want to say about me, I genuinely don't care. And people most of the time say, oh, he's arrogant. Why? Because I don't care. I can't live my life for somebody else. What I've been through, the past few years and that, why should I care about living my life for somebody else? I got to care about what I'm doing now and enjoying what I'm doing, period.
Going back to the football journey, and it hasn't worked out at Arsenal, like you say, didn't see eye to eye with the manager, and you wind up at Bristol City where you're scoring goals. When did you first become aware that Newcastle might be having a look at you and there might have been an interest from Kevin Keegan?
I didn't. I'll be very honest. I remember Dennis Smith was the manager when I was at Bristol City, and Dennis pulled me in. Might have been the Friday. We had a game obviously on the Saturday. Pulled me in on Friday and said, "Look, we just had a bid from Nottingham Forest." He said, "The bid's 600 grand, and obviously we about to turn it down. We played 500 grand for you. I think Arsenal had 30% sell on whatever it was. So I can't sell you for that." So I said, "Not a problem." We played on the Saturday. I think we ended up losing the Saturday, and Dennis got sacked. Sacked on Monday morning or whatever. So I'm like, just get on with it. Keep playing and that. I remember I was out doing my laundry, and in those days mobile phones wasn't what they are now. And I remember coming out the laundrette, going to my car, and there was a note on it from Russell Osman, and basically said, "Look, Coley, you need to get in contact with me." I'm like, okay. Got in contact with Oz. He said, "Look, we've just accepted a bid from Newcastle. You can speak to Kevin Keegan." So in the end, spoke to Kevin, and that was that. Kevin asked me to come out the following day. I said, that evening to be fair, and I said, "Look, I can't make it this evening. I've got to finish my laundry." So he said, "Okay, can you come up tomorrow morning?" So I said, "Yeah, fine, no problems." And I did just that.
So what do? You drive up there and
got on the shuttle.
Right.
Yeah, I got on the shuttle because at that time I was in between Bristol and living in London. So just drove up to London, got myself sorted, and then flew to Newcastle that morning.
How aware were you that Kevin and Terry had been to watch you? And actually, because I think actually what happened was they got a private plane to come and watch you. You must probably know the story now, but Kevin says he'd seen you and he'd put a little note in his book because you'd put Kevin Scott on his arse by all accounts, I think. And he'd never seen anyone do that. It was either Scotty or Kilcline, one of the two, I think. And he said, "All right, put your name down." And he wanted to come and watch you play. And Terry Mack and Kevin got Douglas Hall to get them a private plane. They came up to see you. And Kevin tells a story that as you're walking out the tunnel and him and Terry are sitting there, your legs all strapped up.
Yeah.
And Terry goes, "Oh, no, look, he's injured." And Kevin said, "No, I've seen enough. If he's carrying an injury, if he's prepared to still go out there and play, then he's the man that we need." What does that say about Kevin Keegan?
He's prepared to take a gamble on someone who I know I am. If I got a knock and I know I can still give you something, I'll do just that. I'm not an individual who's going to try and swerve a game because I got a little knock. And I think when I was younger, my passion for football was, if you can play and it hurts a little bit, just run it off. Which ultimately you can't do, but get on with it. Man up, get on with it, and you play. And I remember when Kevin mentioned that to me, and he was saying, "Look, yeah, your knee was bandaged up, but you still want to play." And I said, "What? That's me. The way I've grown up and where my parents had come from, just said, look, get your head down and work hard. Whatever you do, you give it 100%.
What was that initial meeting like with Kevin? Did you hit it off, the two of you? Did you?
Yeah, I enjoyed the conversation with him, but the craziest thing is, before I even spoke to Kevin or knew about Newcastle, I played with Clarkey for years. And Clarkey always used to say to me, oh, come on, lad, come on, Newcastle. And I'm like, Clarkey, it's not happening, mate, it's not happening. He said, nah, you'll love it, you'll love it. I'm like, I always used to say to him, look, Slim, do you know how far it is? I mean, he always used to say to me, Coley, you'll love it, you know what I mean? The fans will love you and you'll score goals. I'm like, it's too far. I said to him, it's near Scotland. Yeah, and he kept saying, nah, you'll love it, you'll love it. So him pushed me when we was younger, playing for like England when we were kids, 21s and whatever. And then like I said, when I had the conversation with Kevin, you know, it was a real good conversation, positive conversation. But I remember Clarkey saying to me, look, I'll look after you. Whatever happens, I'll look after you and all that. And that was always stuck with me, and I said, okay, if you're prepared to look after me, I'll come and I'll sign. So speaking with Kevin, obviously it was fantastic, but speaking with Clark and him saying, look, I'll look after you, man. Come out and we'll go from there. And I thought, yeah, why not? Give it a go.
There's quite a lot of local lads in that team, aren't there, as well? You know, the likes of Clarkey and Watto and so on. Did they sort of welcome you in and make you feel part of the family?
They made it easier for me, 100%. But Clarkey was the main guy for me. The main guy. And without him, you know, making it as easy as he did do, I'd have found it a little bit harder to settle in and all that kind of stuff. But he was always there for me.
Another local man is someone who you'll always be remembered as playing alongside, having an incredible sort of strike partnership. That was Peter Beardsley. You've had some fantastic strike partnerships over the years. I always think yourself and Dwight Yorke, of course, at Manchester United later on. But I mean, how special was that sort of relationship you had with Beardsley on the pitch?
You know, top drawer, real special. I learned so much from him, and I think when you're young and you're playing football, one of the things coaches always used to say, oh, keep on the move, keep moving. And we was in a friendly game, and I remember Peter said to me, just said, Coley, just stand still. I'm like, what do you mean stand still? I've never been told, just stand still. You're being told, keep moving. He said to me, just stand still, and I guarantee you'll get the ball and you'll have more time on it. I'm like, nah, I can't be right. And I did that. I'm like, oh, bloody hell, what's happening here? You know, and just the knowledge and his experience that he used to give me, he used to say to me, just keep making your runs and I'll get you in. He said, not a problem. He said, don't stop making runs. I said, do that. I always used to find him and whatever. And I thoroughly enjoyed playing with him because I learned so much from him. I started to understand the game more, playing with him and getting myself in areas that I didn't think were the right areas, but ultimately they were the right areas because I was playing with him. You know, and I just thought, what a special player. You know, and I remember he always used to say to me, he said, you can go as far as you want to go. You know, you can play at whatever level you want to play at. You know, so when I used to hear that from him, like such an experienced player, you know, saying things to me like that, I thought, yeah, I've got half a chance here.
There were three very popular sort of forwards at Newcastle before they signed you. They had David Kelly, Mickey Quinn and Gavin Peacock. They were all very popular with the fans, but Kevin says he didn't quite think they could cut it in the Premier League, but he knew you could. So just picking up what Peter said, Kevin almost signed you by the signs of it because he thought you'd be someone who could lead the line in the Premier League. Would you say that step up to the top level made you a better player? Because you took to the Premier League like a duck to water.
Yeah, I would say that, but I had this fire in me, and obviously I've had this fire from when I was a kid. But the rejection I felt when I left Arsenal, it was burning. Whatever was going to happen, whatever I had to do, I was going to get to that level. I was going to prove everybody wrong. So, you know, when I come to Newcastle and I finally got in the team, 'cause when they got promoted from League One into the Premier League, and I remember sitting down with Kevin and he said, I'm bringing someone special in for you next year. I'm like, oh, I've got Ned, and I thought, me and Ned are doing all right. He said, no, I've got someone special for you. And he wouldn't tell me who it was, and then obviously we brought Peter in. I'm like, wow. You know, and then to hit it off with Peter the way I did I think that really inspired me to know that I can play at this level. How it's going to work out, you never know. I'm not going to sit and say, oh yeah, I knew I was going to do this, I knew I was going to do that. You never know, but I was fortunate. I played in a team that was built for me. And if you play in a team that's built for you, it makes things a hell of a lot easier.
Yeah, I was going to say how much of a difference it have on your playing ability when you know the manager is you're his number one man.
Yeah. I'm having this conversation with you now because based on them. You know, I'm not a selfish individual who thinks about me. Without them creating the chances for me to score goals, I don't have this conversation with you. And I've always said throughout my career and come to the end of my career and retiring, you know, I had a team that was built for me. It was built for me to score goals. Any chance created, 9 times out of 10, let's try and create for Coley. You know, if he gets in, get it in the box, or he gets in certain positions, get a Coley and he'll finish it off or whatever it may be. So it was basically my team, a team that was built to create chances for me to score goals. And I was very fortunate that the manager believed in me so much that he thought I could score goals, i.e. in League One when they got promoted, and then going into the Premier League.
To get promoted from, like you say, the sort of second tier and come up into the Premier League, I don't think Newcastle fans really expected much. You know, you're thinking, oh, just stay in the division, let's hope we can consolidate for a couple of years. But bloody hell, I mean, you just took the league by storm, ended up finishing 3rd. I mean, it's unheard of now. I mean, every year teams come up to the Premier League and it's like, can they stay up?
Yeah.
To come up and just finish like top 3.
No, it's crazy.
Ridiculous.
It was crazy. Some of the football we used to play, it was mad. Some of the games we were in, you know, there was slim chance of us keeping a clean sheet, and I mean slim. You know, we'd end up losing 4-3, 5-3, or winning 4-3, 5-3. You know, Kevin didn't really believe in defending. He might say, oh yeah, we used to work on it. Minimal defending. It was all like, just attack, play football, get the ball in the box, great chances. Defensively, you guys do what you're doing, but, you know, go and score goals and enjoy it. And that's where obviously they got the name, the entertainer. That's what Newcastle used to do back then. They used to go out there and just entertain, score goals, and up and down roller coaster. But it was fantastic to be a part of. I thoroughly enjoyed it. In fact, I loved every minute of it, to be fair.
What was training like? Because Kevin used to get involved with the games and all sorts.
Yeah, he used to, to be fair to him. He used to. Terry as well. The both used to get involved. Faz, and I used to keep Faz out of it. Faz was terrible. You know, but Kevin and Terry, I used to get involved. And then coming after, them two were the king of the head tennis, to be fair.
Yeah. Did they still had a bit of ability then?
Jordan? Yeah. I don't think I appreciate it, because obviously I watched clips of Terry, you know, but I didn't appreciate just how good Terry was. Yeah. And what a funny man. I loved being around him, because some of the things he used to come out and say, he just have you falling about, laughing. You know, I used to call him the Barnet, you know, because back then he used to have his curly perm and top man. Yeah, I've got so much respect for him.
Both Terry and Kevin have got their health issues at the moment, as we know, and I'm sure you would wish them both well.
Oh, 100%, you know. Without both of them, I'm not in a position to be having this conversation. So I appreciate everyone that's done something for me in my career.
Your goal record was ridiculous, and just looking at 1994, mate, I mean, Premier League Golden Boot winner, PFA Young Player of the Year, of course Newcastle United Player of the Year as well. Record goals in the league. It was just everything you touched went in. I mean, when you look back now and you see the tapes back, I mean, do you just think, wow, was that your best year, do you think? I mean, you achieved so much at Manchester United, but purely on you, was that you in your absolute best form that year?
I think goal-wise, I've said and I'll keep saying it, for me, it was a free hit. Newcastle that season is a free hit. Because what do people expect from us? To finish 3rd, no. For me to get the goals I've got in the Premier League, no. So we just go out there and just go and enjoy it. And that's what I did. I went out and enjoyed it. The players went out and enjoyed it. and we played football and expressed ourselves. You know, so when you got a free hit, you just go out there and crack on, and that's exactly what we did. I'd never sit here and say, yeah, I expected to get the goals in the Premier League that I did. No, I didn't, because I'm playing against the best then, you know. And I just enjoyed every single minute of it, you know, having the opportunity to play in the Premier League, you know, having the opportunity to play against the best players, and, you know, in the elite league, and going out there and, you know, pitting your weight against the best players. I just enjoyed my time.
It was a bit of a going out culture as well, you and the lads, and do you enjoy it off the field as well as on the field?
Yeah, I remember, obviously, when I joined, and Clark said, look, I'm taking you for a night out. Wow. Well, I'm saying to myself, Slim, man, what's happening? He said, Coley's like this every weekend. I'm like, Slim, this is crazy, you know? Winter, I'm like, you're going out winter and the women have got no clothes on or nothing. I'm like, come on, Slim, man, this is mad. You know, but I always enjoyed a good night out. We always had a laugh, we always had a joke. My mates used to come out and enjoy the night out or whatever it was. So it was fantastic back then, you know. It was, sitting there looking back, it was just real fun. You know, no one playing, sat there, you get a great result, you go out in the town, everyone's buzzing, you know what I mean? Everyone wants to buy you a drink, and yeah, it was a great time for me.
Do you think that's also something maybe missing a bit from modern football? I mean, the lads these days, you know, your son's a professional footballer, can't socialise in the way that you guys got to.
Yeah, and I think social media's taken that away. You know, and I've always said, and I keep saying, you can't, for me personally, you can't have it both ways. You can't want to be out enjoying yourself and then, you know, something comes out or whatever maybe, you got a box clever now. And I look at it now and say to myself, would I want to be playing now with all these social media? I don't think I would, because you want to be able to go out there and enjoy yourself, have a laugh and joke with your mates, and do what people should be doing at a young age. Yeah, you're professional football, I get that, but still enjoying yourself to a certain extent. No, it's just a lot tougher now.
Get on to your move to Manchester United. How tough was it to leave Tyne's side, and when did you first become aware of the interest from
I think
Alex?
When I was playing, and I think I had to appreciate, once a manager makes a decision on you to move you on, you know, you've got to make that decision to move on. You know, it's like a relationship, you know what I mean? Your girlfriend, your wife decides, you want to move on and whatever, you try your best to try and sort it, it doesn't work, you got to keep it moving. And I think when I found out about it, like Kevin made a decision to move me on and whatever, because I said to myself, that's the one club I want to play for is Manchester United, you know, and why not? Why not? If the manager doesn't want me anymore, go for it. So when I did find out, and you know, it happened very quickly, I didn't know too much about it. You know, I remember playing in the FA Cup, Blackburn up St James's Park on a Sunday, go home, warm down Monday morning, Monday evening, get a phone call, right, the deal's on for you, go to Manchester United. That's how it happened. And when people said, no, I forced the move, and I'm like, I forced the move? I can't force a move I never knew about. You know, oh yeah, you know about it, you was doing it. I'm like, oh, nonsense, because I know how it went. And if someone can tell me how it went, I'm like, well, how do you know? Because obviously you knew before me. You know, so when it did happen, I just go for it, man. It's a club that I want to play for, and gives me the opportunity to go there and be able to possibly go on and try and win things. You know, and that's what happened.
Do you feel it's sometimes, even still today, misunderstood?
Yeah, very much so, because I think everyone's got their own narrative about it and how it went and the role that I was supposed to have played in it and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, it never went like that. You know, if I knew about it, not the day, like Monday, if I knew about it, you know, you have the conversation with the manager and find out why and whatever. I mean, because to this day, me and Kevin have never had that sat down and have a conversation. What were the reasons? You know, he just said to me, when I spoke to him briefly on the Monday evening going out to Manchester from Newcastle, look, you know, gonna move on. I think teams have worked this out. I mean, I'm getting Keith Gillespie, and I think you'll go to Manchester United and you'll win things. And that was it. You know, it wasn't like, oh yeah, it was X, it was Y, it was Z. It was like, that was a conversation. So, as we say, just keep it moving.
Fair to say, both probably emotional guys, you and Kevin. I know you both very well. And sometimes in the emotion of football, that's how it goes.
Yeah, Kevin, I mean, as I appreciate when I played under him and as an individual, he's very emotional. You know, I'm totally opposite because I give you nothing. You know, I give you totally nothing. You know, I look back and I just laugh now because there's certain things like, you know, when we had the disagreement when we was playing, I think we was playing Wimbledon in the League Cup, and he told me to do one, and I packed my bag and went missing. You know, I'm like, who's he talking to? That was in my head. You don't talk to me like that. My dad don't even talk to me like that. So then I went missing, and then, you know, got back together. But it was never the same. It was never the same. I knew it wasn't the same. You know, I just had that vibe and that feeling. You know, come back, and from there, you know, when I ended up moving, people looked at that and said, yeah, most of it was the reason why. You know, and yeah, decisions were made from there.
This section of the podcast is brought to you by Oddballs. Need some new underwear? Well, Oddballs has you covered. From some bold and incredible designs to something slightly more understated for the less adventurous of you. Born and based here in the Northeast as well. Why not overhaul your underwear drawer and turn to Oddballs? Stepping up from Bristol City to Newcastle, you know, it was, like I said, Dr. Water before. You've settled in very quickly. What was it like then stepping into Old Trafford? You know, one of the biggest clubs in world football. You know, profiles gone up again. How easy was that transition, or was it difficult?
You know, it was tough. You know, I remember my first training day at Manchester United. You know, gone in, trained at Old Trafford, empty Old Trafford, and I didn't realise or didn't understand just how big Old Trafford was. When it's empty, it was like, I'm like, Jesus, it's a big gaff this, isn't it? You know, and I've gone in the dressing room, and I remember I sat myself in a corner, and then the boys are coming in, introducing themselves to me. You know, the kit man, Norman Davies, who's no longer with us, you know, I remember speaking to Norm and said, look, Norm, can you do us a favour, please? I said, I've got no boots, can you give me some boots? You know, and then Norman screams from the top of his lungs, Jesus, we just paid £7 million for you, got no boots. But I never had the opportunity to pick my boots up. So then he gives me some Umbro boots. You know, I got there, training Umbro boots, first training session at Old Trafford. Reebok are pissed off because I'm sponsored by Reebok, I'm wearing Umbro boots. I mean, so I'm like, oh, my first day was like this, Jesus. You know, didn't go particularly well, and then I'm looking in the dressing room at the boys and that, and I'm saying to myself, a few years ago, I'm watching all these guys. You know, I said to myself, one day I'd love to be able to play for Manchester United, you know, and now I'm actually playing for Manchester United, looking at these guys. Because people failed to understand, I'd only been in the Premier League a year and a half. You know, so a year and a half, yeah, and then you end up playing for Manchester United after a year and a half in the Premier League. You don't get them stories now. You know, but I think everyone seems to think that I was in the Premier League for 4 or 5 years. No, a year and a half before I was playing Division 2 football at Bristol City, you know? And then you move on so quickly, it's like, wow. You know, so it happened very, very quick, and growing up and understanding what Manchester United was about wasn't easy.
How much does your brain become a hindrance in that situation? Because you start thinking, like, say, from your wrong boots, and then got all these players that you've been watching. Can your brain be almost your biggest enemy in those situations?
Yeah, I think for me at the time, because I'm going in there. When I moved to Newcastle, like I said, I came, it's a free hit, can't enjoy it. Like I said, I've got Clark in there, and he's G'ing me up every day, just get on with it, you know. And then going to Man United was a totally different experience, because these guys have been on that level for some time. You know, I've gone in there and young, inexperienced, however you look at it. And then you go out there, I'm trying to justify a fee because I'm thinking, but if I was older and understood, the fee wouldn't have bothered me in the slightest. But when you're in that position, you know what I mean, just turned 25 and I'm trying to justify this. What am I justifying? But that was the only way I thought I could understand the move and try and justify it. Oh, yeah. But like I said, if I'd gone there a couple of years when I was older or whatever, maybe the fee wouldn't have meant nothing to me. You know, so I got caught in that battle. And once you get caught in that battle, and then you take a little bit of flack, and then your confidence gets dented a little bit. You know, you do question yourself a little bit. But then in the end, I went kind of like, no, sod it. You know, it's gonna be what it's gonna be. Get your head down, continue to do what you're doing before, go back to basics, and then we can go from there.
I saw a lot of Newcastle fans after the whole Alexander Isak saga over the summer say, I haven't felt this bad since Andy Cole left back in the 90s. Could you see Newcastle fans making that sort of analogy a little bit, although, like you say, your situation was very different, but certainly the heartbreak they felt?
Yeah, but of course, because what I realised when I was here and I was playing here, you know, the love and support they give you is mad, it's intense. And like I said, when I first came, I'm like, oh my God, Slim, I can't handle this. You know, I'm going to the supermarket, I've got people following me around in the supermarket, I'm leaving my basket and everything, just walking out the supermarket, I'm playing football, and like, you come out, the adulation for me was too much. I'm doing a job, man. I just want you guys to be happy, win a game, I go home, you go home, let's keep it moving. You know, that was too much for me. Everywhere I went, it was like, oh, Andy Cole. I'm like, nah, this is mad. So I get it now, you know, I totally understand where they're coming from, you know, but like I was saying off here, I think for me personally, if I was in that situation, I'd have continued to play, you know, get my head down, play, and if the move happened, it happened, and then it's amicable. You know, everyone's that, look, he played until whenever, he moved on, he scored goals or whatever maybe. Like I said, I was in a totally different position. You know, and the way my move happened, I mean, that's the way it happened. Like I said, I wouldn't have rejected playing because I love playing, and, you know, Newcastle gave me that opportunity.
You've never done it. It's something you see quite a lot of players, and not just Isak, happening, you know, we saw Johan Wissa come over, but it happens quite a lot now. Players sort of down in tools and like, I'm not playing. Not ever a route you would go down.
No, different generations as well. You know, I wouldn't have done that. No, just go and play, man. Just go and play. If it's going to happen, it's going to happen. The deal will happen if it's meant to happen. If it's not meant to happen, it won't happen. You know, but if I've got the opportunity this time to continue to play, continue to score goals, that's what I want to do, because if I do move on, I know I'm in decent form when I move to my next club or whatever. Not sitting there watching it and saying, nah, I'm not playing. What do you get by not playing? Nothing. What, staying at home and watching on TV or whatever? Play, man. Play and enjoy it. It's a short career. So you've got to play as many games as possible.
How was Sir Alex Ferguson for you? How much of an impact did he have on your career?
Yeah, I sit back and I always say he had a massive impact on me. And I think for me, in my playing career, he was the only manager who kind of like understood where I was coming from, could get into my head. Because people can't get into my head. You know, I remember when I was a kid at Arsenal, and it always makes me laugh. Pat Rice was my coach in the youth team, and I remember Pat always used to say, don't worry about it, I'll get into his head, I'll break him. And I used to say to myself, laughing, Pat, you got no chance, yeah, because I can't get into my head. I mean, he used to do everything. You should do this, I'll run him, I'll do that. I'm like, fuck, it makes no difference, you got no chance, yeah? And then moving on and then playing under Sir Alex, he was the only person who could actually sit me down and say, okay, what's going on? I mean, family background is this, it's that, whatever. I'm like, okay, no. So you end up having a conversation with him, you end up talking to him and telling him things that you're not supposed to tell him. You know, but the way he used to speak to you used to make you feel so comfortable and understand it. And you know, he was just so good. And mentally, he got into my head. You know, and that's why I enjoy playing for him, because he understood where I was coming from. You know what I mean, understood my makeup. You know, yeah, I'm a quiet individual, but being a quiet individual, you are the way you are because that's just you. You know, I get it, I understand it, and I manage you accordingly. You know, when he used to scream and shout at me, it never bothered me because when I was growing up, I used to get all that. So he was just so good. You know what I mean, like I said, the one manager for me throughout my playing career actually understood me for me.
When you say you used to grow up and you used to get all that, were the hard times as a child?
Yeah, as a child, you know, I mean, of course you're gonna go through a hard time, but it sets you up. You know, I sit here and, I mean, sometimes when I'm at home, I sit and think about my child and I say, bloody hell, it was tough. But I wouldn't have had it any other way, so, because I look at kids growing up now, I'm like, man, you can't be doing things like that. You know, so I know the way I was brought up and the way my parents brought me up, you know, made me who I am. I mean, I love that. You know, and I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't change it for the world.
5 Premier League titles, 2 FA Cups, the Champions League in 1999, of course, that treble season. You'd score 121 goals in 275 appearances for Manchester United. I mean, proved to be a great move for you, didn't it? I mean, you achieved so much. You must be immensely proud of what you did in your time in red of Manchester United.
Yeah, but of course I am. Even being that individual, I can't live there. You know, I can't live there. I refuse to live there. And I'm not a guy who even tries to look back and say, oh yeah, I was fortunate to win this. It is what it is. You know, I loved every minute of it. Would I do it again? 100%. I'll do it again, but that don't mean I continue to live there now. You know, you got to try and move forward with life and, you know, take big steps forward. I mean, but every opportunity I do have that chance to look back, I enjoyed every minute of it. You know, going through the COVID period, and that's the only time I sat there and thought, I did all right, didn't I? You know, the only time I've actually said, yeah, I've done all right and I made it. You know, otherwise for me it's like, come on, every season you're going for pre-season, it's a fresh season, start again.
Do you think you should do that a bit more? Look back at what you've achieved and try and pat yourself on the back once in a while, Coley?
No, you can't live there, man. I think that's come from my dad, you know. Keep going. My dad and my granddad was like, keep going forward. I mean, as my brother said to me one day, you know, we go forward because if we was meant to look backwards, you know, we'd have eyes in the back of our head. So you got to keep going that way. And that's what I try and do. I always try to keep going forward, you know. Yeah, of course, we all still going to make mistakes in that, but always try to go that way now.
We talked about you and Peter Beardsley. What about you and Dwight Yorke? Great friendship off the pitch as well, and fantastic link up on the fields. How do you rate that sort of partnership? Special,
very special. I think when something's just meant to be, it's meant to be. Considering it was never meant to be, you know, the way it turned out in the end, and you know, people talk about that and just the love and admiration they have for that partnership that me and Yorke had at Manchester United. You know, is really, really special. You know, something that, you know, obviously looking at my son, he plays now, and many people have talked about it and touched on it. You know, like I said, when you have that opportunity to look back, I look at that and I do smile and do laugh at it. You know, when something's not meant to be but happens, it's like, wow. You know, the way it worked out was very, very special.
Right character as well, Dwight, isn't he?
Yeah. We are yin and yang. I think that's why we just get on so well, because what he is, I could never be. You know, but when we're together, it works. It's a proper chemistry. And, you know, the chemistry that people turn around and say, well, I'm surprised you two get on. But yeah, like a house on fire. And that's the way we used to get on. You know, and you know, even when we catch up now, that spark comes back straight away, you know, laughing, we're joking. I mean, we're talking about nonsense or whatever maybe. And I mean, I love that. I always love that kind of energy, but I always love having the opportunity to catch up with the guys that I played with anyway.
I always remember interviewing you both together for Sky Sports News. I think he was in Dubai and you were maybe in Manchester. We were all on a link up, and I remember saying to you both, would you two like to play against this current Manchester United defence? And there was you looked at each other and it was like, who's gonna take this one? You both just burst out laughing.
I remember that one, yeah. Yeah, because the way we played, we would give anyone problems. And I think we knew that. I mean, we never feared anybody. We respected people, of course, but we never ever feared, like, oh yeah, we won't cause problems to them. We believed in each other implicitly that we'll cause anyone problems.
When I look back at all your stats, the one that sticks out to me, and I've spoken to you about this before, it's a surprise, just 15 England caps. When you look at all your goals you scored, you know, I mean, surely, even that 94 season at Newcastle, and then when you're playing at Manchester United, you'd think that number would be double, treble that.
Yeah, you know what, it is what it is. think about it. People mention it all the time. Should have got more than 15 England caps. I'm like, don't really bother me now. At the time, yeah, of course you want to play for your respective country because you know you're more than good enough. And it used to frustrate me a little bit when I was playing, but now I'm like, don't really care. I'm not being nonchalant or anything like that. It doesn't really bother me. Oh yeah, it wasn't good enough. Well, you say what you want to say, you know? A lot of people would turn and say, oh, I'm not good enough. And the way I flip it on it said, no, I'm like, oh. Obviously people who say that would do better than me then. You know, or you have your opinion, but you've never been in that position to even have that conversation about never being good enough. So it is what it is. Yeah, you look back and say, okay, that's fine. Yeah, let's keep it moving.
Do you think it was your reputation we talked about right at the start? Did people perceive you as arrogant or something? Do you think that was what stopped it?
Yeah, of course, but I can sit and say to you, Pete, like, what is arrogance?
Yeah.
What is arrogance? What is people's perception of someone being arrogant? People don't go around saying, you know what, he's very respectful, he's very manageable, isn't he? Yeah, he's always saying please and thank you. I mean, which I always say please and thank you. No one ever turns around and says, oh yeah, he's always saying please and thank you. Some people don't even say that. You know, so what is arrogance? You believe in yourself, which ultimately, growing up as kids, your parents will always say to you, if you don't believe in you, who's gonna believe in you? But it's the same kind of thing, isn't it? You know, you have to believe in yourself. And that's exactly what I did.
Any regrets looking back?
No regrets. No regrets, no. Because if I had any regrets, I would never achieve what I achieved. So I've got no regrets. I've done it, I did it my way, which was the most important thing. I've got to do it my way, not the way someone else wanted me to do it. I did it the way I thought was right for me, and in the end, it worked out.
I've got a little gift for you here, Andy. Our ball sponsor, some new underwear for you, mate.
Thank you very much, much needed.
Just, I thought that about you. Yeah.
Much needed, yeah. You can never have enough underwear.
It's been great to speak to you. Thanks so much for coming to see me today, and listen, we'll look forward to chatting to you again very soon.
No problems. Thank you very much for having me.